This first piece is, I'm just doing two short pieces. This first one is from my upcoming memoir. It's called Killing Justice, right, but it's really short, 1.5. When I was arrested at LAX and hauled off to federal prison, I suddenly realized two things. Life's not fair, and we are not in control of our lives. In fact, I remember feeling like the real prisoners were those outside those prison walls, as they too were all living in a house of fear, only most of them were blissfully unaware of that fact. For as the arcade song, City with No Children, expresses it so well, this world has largely become a garden left for ruin by a millionaire inside of a private prison. That same millionaire is, in fact, no less trapped in a house of fear than someone like Russell Shoatz, who's been in solitary confinement now for decades. In fact, in some perverse way, the person in solitary may actually be better off, because at least they know they're in hell. But how could I ever hope to express this reality to those who've never experienced it? For example, one reality the past 3 years and counting in hell has driven home for me is the universality of trauma. But also how only those who've managed to become aware of their own trauma can ever have any hope of healing from it. For, in the words of both my fellow Scotsman Ian McLaren and Aristotle before him, we must be kind, for everyone we meet is fighting a hard battle. And yet, ironically, at the time of my arrest, I was supposed to go to my screenwriting class, where I was working on what I thought was a fictional screenplay about an adopted immigration lawyer who gets falsely accused of a crime. But then, when it actually happened to me, and I finally returned to my screenwriting class 2 weeks later, after having spent 8 days in federal prison, no one could believe any of the scenes I shared, even though they were all true, while they'd had no problem believing the fictional scenes I'd written previously. So for the next 6 months, I was completely creatively blocked, until finally the floodgates opened, and I proceeded to write 3 volumes of poetry, Swimming in a Thunderstorm, Surfing the Tsunami, and finally Surrendering to Transcendence, over the next couple of years to try and heal from the trauma, as the only way I could express the trauma was to dissociate by means of the poetic voice. And now I'm finally ready to try and express this trauma more directly through memoir, with the hope that by openly sharing just what a frightened little child this experience has revealed me to be, I would give permission to my readers, to my audience, to see what frightened little children they might be, and that the only hope for healing is to truly embrace how unconditionally loved we are, always have been, and always will be. For the first step to healing is to acknowledge that we were all fellow prisoners, trapped in a house of fear. As once we finally acknowledge that, then hopefully we can begin the healing journey to the true house of love by exposing those abusers of power who'd like nothing better than to keep us all trapped within the same house of fear they're trapped in.